The age of AGI is here, and every news headline on CNBC and all the business and Silicon Valley news outlets repeats and repeats that we live in the greatest time ever, and you can start all these startups and you can make so much money and everything is possible now. But I think all of these people and all of the pitches out there, from coding AIs to LLMs to all kinds of funny little things, all the way to robots, actually fall short by a lot, fall short of what we actually should do and can do. Because I think the age of AGI opens up a completely new economic reality. And that reality doesn't just break conventional economics, it basically breaks the foundational assumptions we have about our existence and about civilization itself. And because of that, I think we can design something that I call the world's greatest pitch. It is the world's greatest pitch because it can create infinite prosperity. This pitch I'm going to give you today is not a pitch about a startup. It is not a pitch about a TAM, a total addressable market. It's not a pitch where I say, oh, you can make $1 billion or $1 trillion. It is a pitch about an opportunity we all have now to make infinite money for everyone. The point is that nowadays we can basically engineer anything. And with anything, I don't mean robots or something. I mean we can engineer reality itself. Now, that has been true forever, by the way. People always could engineer reality. That's why we created and how we created civilization. But it was very, very cumbersome. Ask Isaac Newton or whoever, or Nikola Tesla. It was very cumbersome. Ask Rockefeller, all these people. It was very slow, cumbersome. You needed to get a little lucky on all kinds of fronts. You needed to do this over decades and decades and decades. And then maybe in the end you have a railway or you have a little electricity power plant. But it was definitely some luck involved, a lot of luck, some privilege sometimes, and a lot of time. And all of that changes now. You don't need luck anymore. You definitely don't need privilege anymore. You don't even need that much capital anymore, even though you need a little bit, to engineer basically anything you want. If you want to create a great SaaS startup, right, a services platform online, you just go to Lovable or Replit or whatever and vibe code this thing. Within 24 hours, you have a software that would have cost you millions of dollars before. And you have it also in a day or two instead of in a year or two. And software, by definition, is eating the world, right? We know that. With software, you can basically do anything. So that's why everything can be engineered. But the big question is, once it clicks and we understand everything can be engineered, once you really understand this, and I'm not going to go into that in this video too much. We have a lot of other videos on the channel. You can watch everyone. Once it clicks that we can now, if you're a 19-year-old, high school or freshman, college or high school student, you can basically do anything you put your mind to right now. And the mother of all questions in a world where this is the case is, of course, what do we actually want? What do we actually want to engineer and why do we want that? And of course, if you're a young dude, you're going to say, well, I want money because money is very good, right? I get it. Sure, but you're going to get money. That's not even the trick anymore. Let's put this aside and say, okay, fine, you get money, you invent something, you get money. But still, let's assume you have the choice between a lot of things that would make you money. What do you actually want to engineer? And that leads us a little bit to the great question. And I want to show you a model, a very simple visual model that I developed to make this whole thing a little bit more clear. So let me start. Here's my model. It is a model of the human economy, of the human existence and our economy, put into a very simple two-piece model. So it starts with this insight that we have what I call the AGI unlock, the artificial general intelligence unlock that begins now. Begins right now with the beginning of the year 2026. We are able to do a lot of things very, very quickly. Basically, our reality engineering capabilities go up 1000x roughly, maybe much more very soon. But 1000x, you can do things 1,000 times faster, 1,000 times cheaper. You can develop financial products. We are doing this right now in Pioneerlands. We are developing, we are working on something that are Pioneer bonds, for example, that make you 30% a year. This is not an advertisement. This thing doesn't exist. It's a collaborative effort, by the way. No securities solicitation here. But it's a completely new financial product that would have taken millions of dollars to develop. Now we can do it with a little Claude, a little ChatGPT, and a Grok. We are developing the Pioneer operating system with one person. An entire new web operating system for your life as a pioneer to do all kinds of things. So bottom line is 1000x. Okay, what can we do with that? Well, right now, the way Silicon Valley, the banks, the venture capitalists, and the politicians look at the economy, they are seeing this thing, what I call the physical economy. It's roughly 100 trillion a year. It's moving towards 100 trillion a year. Global physical economy. I would say it's 99% activated with AGI, right? This is Elon Musk doing great things with Tesla, great things with XAI. It's Jeff Bezos and Amazon doing these things. The Max 7, it's Satya Nadella at Microsoft. It is Sam Altman. Love him or hate him. He has ChatGPT. It is, of course, the Google guys. And it is, of course, Jensen Huang at NVIDIA. The Max 7, growing like crazy. But it's also a lot of new startups like Lovable, like Replit, like OpenAI. So what is this physical economy everyone focuses on? It is robots. It's transportation and robo-taxis, all the cars in the world. It is energy, nuclear fusion, oil stuff, batteries, atomic energy. It is all the manufacturing of the world. It is all the AI build out, the intelligence factories, as Jensen Huang says. It's biotech. It's e-commerce and Amazon. So the usual stuff, this is what people think about as the economy. And of course, it makes sense, right? It's atoms and bits, and we are redesigning them for business models to make more money. And the people get it. The people who are smart people at the core of the economy, they get it, they're on it. But there's something I want to present to you that I think is overlooked. You would think, Joe, this is a big, like, what are you talking about? All the opportunities are in this. No, there is another part. There is a second part of the economy that is overlooked that I call the human economy. And before you think this is a kumbaya pitch for Venice Beach people, no, I mean something very tangible. Actually, the human economy, as I see it, I think is 10 times larger potentially than the physical economy. I also think the human economy is only 1% activated because no one gets it. And let me explain it from a first principle economic perspective. What is the economy? And what happens to that physical economy in the age of AGI? The costs, the incremental costs, marginal costs come down dramatically for energy, for intelligence, and with intelligence for everything. Everything will become extremely cheap and extremely available. Everything all the way to medicine, to legal, to all products. Everything will be very, very achievable. But that also means that you can buy a lot of stuff. And it means that humans will think about where does value actually come from. Because that's what the economy is. When you put your money somewhere and buy something, you do it because you think it's valuable. Why is something valuable? Because you want it. This is very profound. You have to understand. Things are valuable because humans want them. The more things you have of something, with the exception of intelligence, the less you want it because you already have it. Okay? And so the question is, when you live in an age of physical and material abundance, how does your value system change? Your want system. And you know where I'm getting at. All your preferences, the 100% want you have. I want 100%. But what is the 100%? Well, right now the 100% is like, 20% is my house. 15% is my car. 15% is food. 15% is finding a job, whatever. That's your problem. That's your problem set. That's your wants. And then you allocate your capital. I'm willing to pay 20% of all my capital for my house. But what happens if you get your house for 2%? What do you do with the other 18%? That's a good question. And in a world of physical abundance, I can tell you exactly what you're going to do. You're going to shift your value system, your want system, your economic value system towards the human. You will invent more products and want more products that give you human experiences. You want nice friends. When you go out of the house, you want a nice city. You want a nice wife or husband. You want nice little children. You want to be healthy and high energy. You want to be smart and inspired. That is the human economy. And that human economy will very rapidly become 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x of the physical economy, because the physical economy, by share of everything you want, will come down because it's so easy to get. The human piece of reality and your life will become much more important. In a way, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that, but a little bit of an economist. That this will actually shift and attract dollars, hard dollars. You will be willing to pay a lot of money to be around the right people where you can find the right friends. You will pay a lot of money to be in beautiful little cities. You will pay a lot of money for being healthy and live very long. And you will pay a lot of money to have a fresh mind and be energetic. You will definitely pay infinite amounts of money to have a big family. One of the great underrated opportunities. People just would pay so much money for this. Now, maybe you say, but Joe, you can't buy these things. You can't buy happiness. You can't buy a wife. You can't buy kids. You can't buy friends. You can't buy health. You can't buy longevity. And you can't buy happiness by being outside in a beautiful thing. And you are completely right. You cannot buy these things. And that is exactly the world's greatest pitch. What if we make them buyable? What if we take all that stuff, I put it here, and make it buyable? Think about that. Because you're right, you cannot buy all these things, and that's exactly the problem. And if you could buy it, you would get very rich if you sell it. And maybe you say, oh, Joe wants to do human trafficking and sell wives or something. Well, but that's not how it works. When I say I want to make this buyable, all that stuff, wealth, by the way, prosperity, imagine you could buy prosperity. People would pay a lot of money to be rich. Think about it. Media, oh my God, how much would people pay for enlightening, motivating, educating, not fake news, not dumb propaganda, media, entertainment, news, and schools. Housing, oh my God, how much would people pay for having beautiful cities where they live? Health, community, family, and general experience. But here's the thing, if you say you can't buy it, we live in the age of AGI. I just told you, you can engineer anything you want. That includes all these things. So I'm saying before you say you can't engineer this, you can't make this happen, well, maybe you're thinking about it the wrong way. And maybe as pioneers, we should actually think about that. Maybe you can make this buyable. And maybe the ways you think it cannot be bought, maybe you're right about that. Maybe you cannot literally buy a wife, just to take that example, or buy kids. But maybe when you go deeper into the layers of logic and reality that make these things happen, maybe you can engineer an environment, a system, a framework where these things become much more likely to happen. And maybe you can sell this entire framework. And maybe this entire framework is actually connected to the other things you'd really, really want, like friends, like communities, like health, like freshness, like energy, like physical energy, beautiful communities, like media, like prosperity. Maybe they are all connected. That is what it means to be a pioneer. You don't think if something is possible, you know everything is possible. You just have to figure out how. And with AI, you can do any kind of psychological, social, economic, financial, legal research to an extent that was impossible before. And that means now you can actually design not just the physical world, not just the boring robots and nuclear power plants and rockets, all cool stuff, but it's kind of boring compared to this green side of the reality. Isn't it much more exciting to engineer the stuff that actually makes you happy? And if you could do that, how much money would people pay for that? And I tell you, it's exactly 10x in the beginning, and then it's soon 100x. They would pay quadrillions for this. And that is why this is the world's greatest pitch. We should build the human economy. We should start doing it now because no one does it, and it becomes now possible. To do that, we need to, of course, think a little bit out of the box and become very, very smart. I give you some more primers. We can't go into all the details. This is basically the topic of Pioneerlands, how we do that. But it has to do with things like inventing a new type of capitalism, for example, right? Because what you have right now is what I call merchant capitalism. This is capitalism where basically everyone rips each other off and you make little deals. It's like, oh, I have a company. I make profit. You don't get the profit because you're my customer. I take the profit from you. And then I give it to myself and my investors are not my customers. Very confusing. But that's how capitalism works today. But the fundamental rules of capitalism could also be applied very differently. I call it pioneer capitalism. This is actually very important when you want to engineer communities, maybe new states, maybe new civilizations, new cultures. You need to think a little bit smarter than a merchant capitalist. You want to use the basics of capitalism, like, oh, profit and cost of goods sold and capital allocation and return on capital. These are all very good things. But maybe you can design a form of capitalism that just outperforms on capitalist KPIs, the other capitalism. And that is what I call pioneer capitalism. I will explain what that, for example, means. When you raise capital from people, from your investors, what if these investors would also be your customers? What if we are just pioneers? What if we are just 10,000 people who are smart, who have a little money and who know entrepreneurship? Say, you know what? Why would we invent another dumb business? We don't need more money, at least not personally. We know how to do things, but what do we do now with our lives? Well, maybe we get together we think what we want, and then we pool our capital and actually build the thing we want. And guess who the customers are? We are the customers. And if there are another 10,000 who are cool dudes who also want to be customers, they also become investors. And suddenly all your investors are also your customers. And guess what happens at that point? You have complete alignment of interest. You also have the most loyal customer base in the universe because they also own everything. Boom. So in the pioneer economy, shareholders are investors, are employees and team members because they run this thing, and they're the entrepreneurs, and they're the customers. They're also the government because they're overseeing this whole thing, so to make sure it actually works. And of course, you can't do that for t-shirt companies because no one is interested enough in t-shirt companies to even do all these things. But when you talk about these things here, the things that make up the human economy that actually everyone cares about, what about media, education, entertainment, and news? Our mindware. Yeah, we care enough about that to actually do it ourselves, to be our own investors, our own CEOs, our own entrepreneurs, our own customers and consumers, and our own government, because it's very important that we control our own media. What about capital? Yes, that's important enough. We should manage our own capital, pool our knowledge, pool our capital, and make way more money, oversee that, and our own investors and our own funds that we manage on our own that we also consume. No fees anymore to some dummies on Wall Street. For our cities, yes, we should own and operate our own cities before we spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands a year on rent and housing. We should spend the same money on our own rent, our own housing, and do this in a pooled way, because then we can actually control the entire city, because now we are the city, because we are the citizens for our own cities. Beautiful. Then we put in our healthcare, our food. These are the things that we really care about because they affect us every single day. So it becomes worth our time to actually own everything collectively with smart people who think like us. And then suddenly we don't have a startup, we have a civilization. Let that sink in. That is pioneer capitalism, where the pioneers own everything, consume everything, and govern everything themselves. Not everything. You can still buy your car from Tesla. You're not going to build cars. That's boring and not important enough. We're also not going to build robots. It's too complicated and other people do it better than us. And it's also not that valuable compared to this stuff. Because this stuff is where the money is and our lives are. And when we do that, when we understand the future is not one startup, the future is to build our own little civilization. Our margins go through the roof. Our deployable capital goes through the roof. Our capital returns will be completely out of this world. And on the whole thing, on the TAM, there is no cap. There is no end to the amount of money we can make by making our own lives better. That is why I think this is the greatest pitch in the world. Don't get a job when you're young. Don't do it. Well, we can talk about this later, but don't do it. Get a job in the pioneer civilization. Don't build a startup. Become an entrepreneur with us. And let's build the pioneer civilization together and create the future. It's a new reality in that everyone becomes a pioneer and engineers the future for everyone. Of course, everyone means only the pioneers. We don't want dummies in here. We don't want people who don't get it. We want accountable people who think like us, who want this thing to work, who are actually interested in progress and understand things, and are willing to learn, to iterate, to imagine, to build, and to succeed. So go to pioneerlands.net. This is my little pitch. There's much more to explain, of course. We have a master plan. We have many things. We have probably soon some capital infrastructures coming to make sure we make enough money, all of us. So a lot of exciting things are happening. But the general gist here is that is the world's greatest pitch. It is time to actually design for ourselves what we care most about. And that is our own civilization built around the pillars of what we care the most about. Capital, so we are rich. Media, so we have the right stuff in our minds that we control and we make sure it's inspiring and smart. Our own cities, because we have to live somewhere with the right people, the right food, the right health, the right entertainment, the right experience. And then, of course, our own state, because we need to be self-governed. Can be compatible with the existing states we live in. We don't have to overthrow anyone, but we want to be self-governed for the things that really matter. And fortunately, the state doesn't care about these things anyway. It doesn't care about health and media and capital and all these things. So there's not even a conflict. That's my quick pitch. I hope that was interesting, and see you very soon.